So, for sound, what's your favourite dinosaur and why?
It has to be the Triceratops. It's, I think when I was a kid I thought it was cute, but looking back I think it's more to do with it was more recognisable than the others. So it looked like a rhino, and I liked rhinos. And it was a little bit cross between an elephant as well. So I think that's why a lot of people tended as a child to think of a Triceratops as their favourite, whereas Tyrannosaurus Rex was a bit scary.
Okay. So, where were you born and raised?
I was born in London, and when I was 2 years old my parents decided to move to Manchester. So up to the age of 7 I was just on the outskirts of the inner city, near on the you know, the old Ashton Hall Road, just off there on a street called Barmouth Street. And at 7, just like a lot of people, I was moved up to Hattersley and lived there till I was 15. Then I went to St James's School on the estate, and then later went to what is now called All Saints, but it was St Peter's and Paul's in Duckenfield. And then my parents, at the age when I was 15, decided to move back to Dublin. So I went back to Dublin, and at 18 moved back, and then I met my husband, and then we kind of have we've lived in Devon, Spain, and eventually ended up back in came to this area. I've got a lot of family here. So I've got family in Chapel-on-the-Frith, Whaley Bridge. My sister lives in New Mills, which is where I live. I have a daughter who lives in the High Peak as well, with me 3 grandchildren. So that's basically it.
So why do you live in the High Peak?
Well, I came back because my mother wasn't well. I came back from Spain, and because my family is here. And as much as I love Spain, love the people, love the weather, it's nothing without family.
Okay. So what were your first and your latest jobs?
Well, my first job was when I was 15, when my parents moved us back to Dublin. I was given a choice to go to school. When I was here, I was training, well, my ambition was to be a fashion designer. And I was going to go to Ashton College and get all my qualifications, but when my parents decided to move back to Dublin, I was given a choice of going to school there or go and work in a job. And a distant uncle was the manager of a sewing factory, and if I'd gone to school I would have had to learn Gaelic. I'd never ever, it's something you learn from when you're a very young child, and I'd never learned Gaelic, so I decided to go to work. So my first job was as a sewing machinist. My last one was a foster carer, and I gave that up in 2012 and enjoyed it, some parts of it.
Okay. So what experience and skills would you bring to the job as an MP?
Well, I believe that I've got a lot of life skills. I have done several jobs. I trained as a chef. I was trained as a classical singer. So I have the ability to speak to people, and I listen to people. I didn't finish school. I never got any qualifications. But I don't think that should ever hold you back from anything. I have the experience of living in different countries, so I have the experience of living with different cultures. And I'm not a career politician, and I think that's a plus.
What standards do you expect from elected politicians?
I believe that all politicians should push the agenda of the people that they represent, the people that elected them. Unfortunately, I think there are too many career politicians. They no longer see it as a civil service. They see it as a job and a stepping stone to getting higher up and getting higher wages. And that doesn't benefit the people they represent. They seem to court the people in order to get the position, and then once they've got the position, they forget that it's those people they represent, it's their agenda that they're supposed to push, and they tend to toe the party line even when it would have gone against their previous moral standing.
Okay.
And I believe that it's my job to push the agenda of the people I represent and not my agenda.
What are your 3 favourite things about the High Peak?
I love the fact it's surrounded by fields. I love open space. Even though I was born in London, raised in Manchester for part of my life, I love the open spaces. And I love the fact that it's little villages all over. Before I started doing this canvassing, I didn't realise how many groups there are. I mean, there's community groups for tidying up areas, there's community groups for looking after the woodlands, there's theatrical groups, there's groups for married people, for women, and that builds a community. I mean, this is one place that you can walk down the street and say hello to somebody, they don't look at you as if you've got 2 heads. And I think that, and it's self-awareness, I think, is what I love about it, and the fact that my family's here, of course, as well.
And what are the top 3 problems in the High Peak right now?
Well, as I've said, I've only been a candidate since April, but I have done some canvassing and I've been listening to the people. And if you take Gamesley, for instance, I never realised. I mean, I've passed through Gamesley going to Charlesworth and things like that, and on the outskirts it looks fine, no problem, until you go inside and you realise how neglected it is. There's fences all over the place that on people's gardens that haven't been repaired, gates that haven't been repaired, things that have fallen apart, and often on people that have disabilities or they're aged people who don't have the money or the ability to fix themselves, and these have just been neglected. You've got a community centre that was built by the residents of Gamesley and now is in the hands of the council, and the council sold it off. So they're going to have nowhere for kids to go to sports events or anything like that. They're also selling off all the green areas around the estate. Now, that estate came to be in the 60s when they moved people from the inner cities into that area, and they promised them then that they would have a train station. They're still waiting. There are 2 places where they can put a train station. The tracks go straight past the estate, and they still don't have a train station. And yet they're building more houses, and they're not social housing. This is private companies building houses to make profit off the land that the kids play on. And this really shouldn't be allowed. I mean, if they're going to build anything, it should be social housing, because the people can't afford to buy them. And they're increasing the population of the estate, and yet there's no infrastructure there. It's wrong. It's totally wrong. It's immoral. You've also got the fact that we've got a lot of people in the High Peak that having mental health issues, and they're waiting years. We need our own mental health centre for the High Peak, and nobody is even talking about it. It's shocking that people have to wait years. We've also, we need more access to, we need a local hospital, and I've got that from people who live in Buxton.
Would you like to pause for a second? We're in danger of looking like Richie Sunak.
Yes.
Hi. We've moved inside, obviously, because of the magical glossop summer weather. So I think we were talking about what you think are the top 3 problems in the High Peak at the moment.
Well, like I said about Gamesley, I mean, people have a right to have pride in where they live. And from talking to the residents of Gamesley, a lot of them are so fed up. They feel neglected. And as I said, we need a mental health centre for the whole of High Peak. We need to get people that I've spoken to several people in New Mills, and they've got relations that are just not getting the attention. You can't get to CAMHS. You've got years of waiting lists. And the thing is, with mental health, people need help now, not in 2 years, 3 years' time. Terrible things can happen in that time. And I've had people say to me they need access to local hospital for this area as well. I mean, we've got the population. You know, we should have it. But these things have to be fought for. It's unfortunate, but we have to fight for them, because the councils have proved over decades they're not going to give these things that are needed. And we need the people to stand up, band together, just like they do in all these groups, and fight for what they want. Make the politicians, make the councillors take notice of what they need, instead of favouring ridiculous ideas that, you know, oh, they'll put in new gardens, or they'll do up some building when people actually need the money spent on them. After all, it is public money.
Okay, so how would you solve these problems?
Well, as I've said, I've only been a candidate since April, and my focus is trying to get the word out, trying to see people, talk to people, convince them that we need change. And if I am elected in, then it's my job to get the right people together, to find out the solutions for these, who are the people to see, who are the people that can make these changes. And as an MP, then I have the authority to push ahead with it. But without being an MP, I have no authority at all.
Okay, and finally, why should we trust you?
I don't ask anybody to trust me. I mean, we've got decades of politicians that have proved you cannot trust them. The only thing I can say is that I promise that if I am elected, I will do my utmost to preserve what we have in the High Peak and what we feel is important to us and what we hold dear. And I'll fight for the things that we need.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.